Hello, everybody. Welcome to this session at the COP26 Resilience Hub. We're delighted to be here with you, those joining us online and those in the room with us. So this session is called Culture as a Pathway to Climate Resilience and Sustainable Development. And it's a partnership between myself, Rosanna Lewis, at the British Council Culture and Development Lead.
And hello, I'm Andrew Potts from the Climate Heritage Network. And Rosanna and I, the British Council and the Climate Heritage Network, have been thrilled to be among a group of co-leads in the culture theme here at the Resilience Hub. And I know that may sound prosaic, but the recognition of culture as a key theme in resilience is really a breakthrough moment here at the COP, and we're thrilled to be a part of that.
Thank you. And this session today will be exploring the cross-cutting nature of culture and heritage and their capacity to integrate and advance a unified vision of sustainable development and climate action. Climate change is not just about the environment, it's about our culture, our ways of living, and humans' relationships with the rest of nature. And culture is both the cause of climate change and part of the climate emergency solution. So this event will showcase culture-based strategies that provide creative, long-term, mutually beneficial and holistic solutions, and will launch a new evidence-based research report on the role of culture for climate resilient development by the Climate Heritage Network and our partners, the United Cities and Local Governments Culture Committee, and will be joined by Jordi online. So I'm delighted to open this session today with our special speaker, Karima Benoun, former UN Special Rapporteur in the field of cultural rights and author of the paper Climate Change, Culture and Cultural Rights. So we'll pass over to Karima.
Greetings, thank you so much. As since Sunday, the former Special Rapporteur on Cultural Rights, my internet connection, if there's a problem, I will get right back in. I want to thank the organizers, the Climate Heritage Network, the British Council, and the Culture 21 UCLG Committee for all their work putting this important event at COP26 together and for including me. We are addressing culture as a pathway to climate development, and honestly, there could not be a more important topic or a more important venue for addressing it. While we must face up to the scale of the challenges, which we know are grave indeed, I also hope we will approach our subject matter with a spirit of urgent optimism, remembering the words of Berta Cáceres, the slain Honduran indigenous rights defender, who said, "Let us come together and remain hopeful as we defend and care for the blood of this earth and its spirit." And I want to think through today what this means in 2021. Indeed, we know urgent change is needed to protect the cultures and cultural rights of billions of people around the world and to avoid the cultural extinction of the most vulnerable. As an official in Tuvalu asked me during my mission to his country, if we are not here anymore, what will happen to our culture? These are the kinds of questions people are facing. Even during the COVID-19 pandemic, the climate emergency remains one of the greatest threats humanity has ever faced and is quite simply the leading threat to cultural rights around the world today. It must be effectively addressed now. So the negative impacts of climate change on human cultures must be placed high on the international agenda. But this is equally true of the positive potential of our cultures and the exercise of our cultural rights to serve as critical tools in our response to the climate emergency. We need nothing less than a tripartite integration of environmental, cultural, and human rights perspectives on climate change in policy and expertise, and the creation of channels of communication and cooperation between policymakers and civil society in all three areas. And I really salute the organizers for all the work that they have done to this end. Given the shortness of time, I'm going to emphasize three main points quickly. The first point that I've already addressed is the the climate emergency poses to cultures. We may lose centuries of human cultural achievement and indeed entire ways of life. And we always have to remember that while these impacts affect all of humanity, the impacts hit specific peoples and places disproportionately, posing particular threats to the cultures of populations in the most vulnerable environments, such as the small island developing states, the Sahel, the Arctic, as well as indigenous peoples, women, persons with disabilities, and youth. It is also important to stress that many people in these categories, including women, are change agents for combating the climate crisis, including in the cultural sector. However, they may face particular obstacles in playing these roles, including at COP26, and I have been sorry to hear reports of the lack of and the difficulties some persons with disabilities have reported in accessing venues. The ability of women in particular to contribute to the climate action is too often equality. So our culture-related strategies must be actively gender inclusive. They must promote global climate justice, infused with an unwavering commitment to all kinds of equality. My second point is that even as they are under threat, cultural rights and cultural resources, including traditional knowledge, are powerful allies in the battle against climate change. Arts and culture are vital avenues for sharing information and mobilizing people and should be more fully integrated into climate action. Cultural heritage, traditional knowledge, and creativity are nothing less than climate assets and should be recognized as such. Arts and culture are critical fields for mobilizing climate action, as well as for information sharing and awareness raising. Cultural heritage can help us benefit from lessons learned in the past about coping with environmental changes and about the integration of nature and culture. It can also be used to inspire and inform climate action. And I think of my visit to the National Library of Tuvalu, whose chief librarian is working to save and preserve its collection in the face of rising seas. And the collection actually contains an archive of vital meteorological records critical for climate change research by experts everywhere. So their cultural heritage is a form of climate action. And I think we need to think about all of these intersections and recognize them. As I always say, culture and cultural rights have inherent value, but now we must also recognize their tremendous utility in our existential fight against catastrophic climate change. This means we have yet one more reason to take culture and cultural heritage seriously, because without them, we are at even greater risk in our warming world. And I will sneak in one final point as my time runs out. And this is that sweeping, rights-respecting cultural change is necessary to alter the trajectory of climate change. The status quo is unsustainable. We cannot simply rearrange the chairs on the Titanic as it sinks. We need to chart a new course, and our cultures are a key part of this. For example, work towards cultures of gender equality and youth empowerment is vital for improving climate change response. We must now make the choices and changes needed to achieve the 1.5 degrees Celsius target and fully embrace the value of our own human and cultural survival. And it's shocking that I even have to say that. We have to put that human and cultural survival above profits and short-term convenience. We must do nothing less than reimagine our relationship with nature and the culture of that relationship. And I know that aspirational words, including my own, are entirely insufficient. We have to heed the youth activists who demand no more blah, blah, blah. Rapid, effective action now by all of us making creative use of our cultures is essential. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karima, for those powerful words and that rallying call to action, and that culture, human rights, and climate issues are all interrelated, and that's what we're here to talk about today on Youth and Public Empowerment Day. So I'm delighted to invite to the floor Alison Barrett, who's our Programme Director for the Climate Connection at the British Council. Alison.
Thanks very much, Rosanna, for all the hard work that you've done to get us here, and thank you so much to the Heritage Network for your partnership. We really appreciate it. So you probably know that the British Council is the UK's cultural relations organisation. We're not climate specialists by any means, but we recognise that climate is the greatest challenge facing all of us. It's the greatest challenge that young people are demanding our attention on, and we believe, as our previous speaker just said, that the role of arts and culture is critical in terms of finding solutions that will benefit all of us in the future. We recognise that it's not just a science issue or not just an education issue, although we do work in science and education as well. We recognise that it's a human issue, and a human issue needs a very human response. Our core mission is to build people-to-people connections, to generate understanding and trust between people, and to help them understand and appreciate diverse views and opinions and come together to create solutions for a range of global challenges. We do that through the tools, as I said before, of arts and culture, education, and the English language as well. It's so important that we should see arts and culture not just as part of the solution for climate resilience, but that it's achieved holistically, that it's something that we do through sustainable development, and that we involve the voices of those most impacted by climate change and by negative climate impacts and events. This isn't new for us. We've been working in climate for many, many years, over 30 years in fact. But what we've done over the last 18 months is to make the work that we do in climate more visible in the run-up to COP, to make sure that we frame the work that we do through a climate lens, to make it clear that it's an issue that we support, and we support across our 100 offices globally. We're also really pleased to be working in partnership with DCMS on a cultural protection fund, which enables us to support and manage projects which protect cultural heritage. We recently gave grants to over 5 countries in East Africa to support them to build a whole range of interventions to protect their heritage, to document and to learn lessons for the future. So with the hosting of COP26, we designed our Climate Connection programme. We have put culture very much at the heart of that programme. I'm really pleased that one of our partners, another partner, is here today, Julie's Bicycle. So Alison is sitting here with us today. And through our partnership with Julie's Bicycle, we've also been trying to raise the awareness of culture. And Alison had a session this morning that was very aptly called Culture, the Missing Link. And in that session this morning, Alison and Julie's Bicycle launched a call to action, a really important call to action that I'd all encourage you to have a look at. And I just want to read one bit from that for you, if that's okay. So they say culture is vital to national economies, bringing creative skills and innovation, influencing lifestyles, tastes and consumption. The cultural sector contributes to greenhouse gas emissions and must play its part by aligning with carbon-cutting targets. But most powerfully, culture can change hearts and minds. It is intimately connected to place, to community. Artists can move us to reimagine our world and inspire societies to take climate action. If that's not a call to action, I don't know what is. We're also immensely proud of our 17 creative commissions, 17 projects that we've funded over the last 18 months, working with 70 partners over 30 countries and addressing a whole range of climate themes through the arts, through culture, through science and digital technology and language. So far through those projects, we've reached around 2 million people. We've directly engaged around 2,000. And just seeing the kind of engagement we've had in Glasgow over the last few days, I'm sure we'll be reaching millions more over the next week or so and beyond. So very importantly, those projects highlight the lived experience of climate change. They stimulate global conversations, and they really help to transform change and create solutions on the ground. So the Climate Connection for us illustrates how we need to reach global public through a variety of different ways and disciplines and tools. We need to try and help bring out the personal relevance of climate change issues for the young audiences we work with, and listen to them when they tell us about the experiences that they're facing, and try and amplify those voices and give them a platform for change. Research conducted by LSE on our behalf showed that creating more opportunities for dialogue across cultures, across difference, across perspectives is a potential space that can be filled by cultural relations organisations like the British Council, and we're really proud to be supporting this area as we move forwards. Our work will continue. Our programme will finish in March, but our work will continue through our, as it has done for the last 30 years. Our partnerships with organisations like INTO and UCLG and the Climate Network will continue. We're really pleased to be part of the COP Resilience Hub here, where we can really help demonstrate and bring this work to a wider audience. We're now going to share with you one of our creative commissions. It's called 9 Earths, and it's by D. Fuse and many collaborators across quite an unexpected collection of countries, from Vietnam, Indonesia, Brazil, and Lebanon. This film aims not only to quantify our carbon footprint around the world through scientific data, but to humanize it, to tell people's stories. The project has filmed over 120 hours of footage of people's daily lives. It's been condensed into short interviews to provide a taster of the world we live in and the choices we make, or not, towards a more sustainable future. We hope that you enjoy this short film. It's just a short version. We're not going to show you all hundreds and hundreds of hours of it. The full version will be screened this evening at Glasgow Caledonian University at 6:30. If any one of you are free later, please join us. And if you want to know more about our work, or if you have ideas for partnership or any feedback and things we could be doing better or differently, please come to our pavilion. It's just behind over here. We're going to be around for the whole of next week, and we'd love to host you there. Thank you.
Can you hear me? There, sorry. Thank you to the creators of that work, and thank you to the British Council for bringing it to us. I think it's an excellent segue into this next portion of the event. We know from science that there is no pathway to 1.5 degrees that does not include tackling poverty and inequality. We know there is no sustainable development in a 3 degrees warmed world. The world doesn't have time for divergent climate action and sustainable development agendas. But how do we unify them, and what is the role of culture in that process of creating climate resilient development? That's what we're going to talk about in this next segment. But we also know from experience that where culture-driven climate resilient development is happening, it's often locally led. And that puts the spotlight on cities and regions. But how many local authorities, how many mayors, how many regional governments are in a position to drive forward a culture-led climate action sustainable development agenda? Some, but not enough. We're lucky to have today with us one of the leaders who is taking forward this agenda, who's making a global impact in the role of culture, climate action, and sustainable development. And it's my incredible pleasure to be able to introduce him to you now. It's Mayor Tunç Soyer, the mayor of Izmir Metropolitan Municipality in Turkey. Mayor Soyer is also the Climate Action Co-Chair at the Global Executive Committee of ICLEI, which is Local Governments for Sustainability. And so, Mayor Soyer, thank you for being with us from Izmir. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for your time and for your concern about this global crisis. The relationship between nature and humanity has alarmed, and it's going worse every day. After 2 decades of time-wasting discussion on whether there is a change in climate or not, mankind finally describes this human-induced disaster as a crisis. Today, the climate crisis is a reality what we all feel in our daily lives and pay prices. During the pandemic, we have seen that we cannot protect our own health without protecting the health of our world. If our planet is good, we are good too. If it is ill, we are all ill. However, I think we have not yet crossed the most sensitive threshold. Will now humanity go around the issue by only changing the color and shape of our habits? Or will we touch the root cause of the crisis and lead a cultural change? We do not know yet. But I know that the fight against the climate crisis will be a never-ending endeavor. The crisis has multi-dimensions, putting the human species to a test to build a culture compatible with nature once again. The climate crisis is not the essential challenge we're facing. It is just a consequence. The essence of the matter is how humans relate to nature. Will this relation be based on the exploitation of nature or on the unity of ecology and economy? Today, I want to stress the significance of the cultural perspectives of the climate emergency as a new era of local and global action. In Izmir, we have experienced pandemics, earthquakes, floods, tsunamis, large forest fires, and almost all possible natural disasters in the last 2 years. From here, the calm but determined struggle of Izmir was born. We strive to be a city that does not forget but remembers, a community which does not give up but learns lessons. Not so long ago, cities and nature held different places in our minds, almost as opposites of each other. City was a fast-paced residential area that created its own culture consisting of houses, theaters, cinemas, concrete roads and factories. Nature was far away. It was wilderness. For many of us, it lived only in documentaries. At best, it was a viewpoint of a recreational area. In Izmir, we are reversing this situation. We plan urban and rural areas as a whole to combat the climate crisis. Instead of leaving the urban and rural transition zone to its fate, we are making it the key to the joint development of ecology and economy, namely the resilience of the city. Today we establish physical, economic, and perhaps most importantly, cultural ties between urban layers, and we manage Izmir with circular city principles. We have identified 4 basic steps in Izmir's strategy for living in harmony with nature. The first of these is the diffusion of nature into the city. Species living in natural areas on the periphery of Izmir shall access the city center through green corridors. Our second step is to sustainably manage people's impact on nature. In other words, we aim to reduce the footprint of urban populations that are willing to access to the rural areas. Our third topic is our work on the circular economy in Izmir. In this context, we establish direct economic links between the city and the countryside. Finally, we aim to increase the cultural ties between rural and the metropolitan areas of Izmir. Circular culture is a paradigm that we developed for this purpose, first described at the UCLG World Culture Summit in Izmir. We have developed this new concept in order to contribute to the solution of the economic and ecological crisis that humanity is in. Because of the title of our meeting today, I would like to discuss circular culture a little more deeply. Circular culture rises on 4 pillars: harmony with our nature, harmony with the past, harmony with each other, and last but not least, harmony with change. Humanity, the inventor of art, philosophy, and economy, inspired by the universe, came to a moment when it broke all ties with nature. By doing so, we failed to develop cultural principles that embrace nature as a whole. From here, the climate crisis was born. On our planet, a species becomes extinct almost every 10 minutes. For this reason, the first pillar of circular culture is based on harmony with our nature. The second pillar of circular culture that we dream of its harmony with our past. It is not possible to design the future of culture without understanding the cultures that lived before us. If we want to realize the cultural change that the world needs so much, this third pillar should be one of our basic starting points: harmony with each other. Here, inclusivity is the key, strengthened by our appreciation of nature rights. Heraclitus, the ancient philosopher who lived in Izmir, had a valuable saying: "The only constant in life is change." This saying prevents all possibilities that may turn culture into a dogma, an ideology, or domination of power. Therefore, I take harmony with change as the fourth pillar of circular culture. We described a new urban program in Izmir that covers all those 4 pillars. This program, dedicated to recultivate circular culture, named Chittaslow Metropole, sees cities as an ecosystem that fosters calmness and harmony instead of populism and autocracy. Izmir was declared world's first Chittaslow Metropole at the General Assembly of International Chittaslow Association, held in Italy on June 12, 2021. Chittaslow Metropole is not a project to shrink a metropolis or go back to the past. On the contrary, Chittaslow Metropole is a project to build the cities of the future in an age of climate crisis. The starting point of this movement can be summarized as follows: transforming our cities into a home where we can rest again. The only way to achieve this is to ensure that not only the streets, parks, and buildings, but also the relationship between the people, namely the culture, is also compatible with nature. That's exactly what circular culture strives for. Nothing will ever get better by itself one morning, out of nowhere. If our world is ever going to change for the better, we will have to achieve it with our great efforts and with decisive stance that we maintain despite all obstacles. Said this, it is clear that our isolated efforts to solve the climate crisis will not work alone. Harmony among our actions is as crucial as harmony with nature. That's why COP26 is valuable. The hours-long negotiations at COP26, attended by hundreds of people, have only one purpose: to find sentences that will shape the future of the world. As humanity searches for life's new sentences in Glasgow, I would like to ask, will we listen to the voice of our conscience? Or will we be overwhelmed by the insatiable ambition of small group of individuals? Here in Glasgow, we will hear the answer. Meanwhile, I seem to hear the answers of thousands of people raising the voice of their conscience indoors and outdoors, in meeting rooms and squares. I know that the same voices is shouted by billions of people in cities and in the furthest reaches of the planet, and by the magnificent biodiversity in forests, rivers, mountains, and seas. I see that young people want to hear from us the words of our conscience, not our ambitions. I see culture as the mortar that binds a building together, or the drops of water that connect the roots and the branches of a tree. Whatever we do in our lives, be it science, arts, sports, or politics, it doesn't matter. Culture is present in all of them. Culture is the mortar that holds it all together, the sap of life. If it oozes away even a little bit, the harmony in life distorts. Life ceases to be a whole. It disintegrates into its individual parts. Therefore, like everything else, the fight against the climate crisis needs a cultural foundation, a circular culture. In this respect, the UCLG Izmir Declaration is a milestone explaining circular culture as a powerful paradigm that can shape the future of humanity. I believe that the Anatolian saying that goes, to the wolf, to the bird, and to food, reflects such a culture. This phrase defines nature not as an environment in which humanity stands at the center, but as a direct subject of rights. It guides the development of circular culture. Moreover, it reveals an experience-based mathematics for sustainability. 2 for nature, 1 for ourselves. Perhaps the most important secret of our fight against the climate crisis is hidden in this short sentence: to the wolf, to the bird, and to food. 2 for nature and 1 for ourselves. I would like to thank you wholeheartedly for inviting me to this valuable session as the mayor of Izmir, one of the ancient cities of Mediterranean, and as a member of the ICLEI Global Executive Board and UCLG Executive Bureau. I greet you all with my affection. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mayor Sawyer. It's heartening to know that a global leader on climate action is so versed in the role of culture and the cultural dimensions of the issue. Very heartening indeed. We're going to continue this theme, but go many thousands of miles from Izmir and from even Glasgow to the Americas for another perspective. And it's my pleasure now to introduce Andrea Laverdi. Andrea is the Deputy Director for International Relations for the city of Bogota, Colombia. Andrea, are you with us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Good. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First, I would like to start by thanking you, the Climate Heritage Network, the British Council, and UCLG for inviting us into this this event, and of course, saluting Mayor Sawyer. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. So I'm really excited actually to be able to do this presentation to you, because not often we get to speak about how Bogota is creating this cross-sector view of climate action and the way specifically that we're integrating climate action with culture. This, I would say, are two of the greatest competitive advantages I believe that Bogota has. For one, I believe maybe some of you know that Bogota for more than 10 years, I believe, has been developing a strong civic culture approach that has been recognized. But for the other, and for those who don't know, Bogota is very lucky because of the place it is located. Bogota is an 8 million people city, and I would say mainly in the 21st century, this is a pleasure to be able to say we're located where the water is born. We are surrounded by wetlands and moorlands that produce most of the water for the region. And not only that, but Bogota, it's not only an urban agglomeration, it is also a rural area. The municipality where we're located, Bogota only comprises, the urban area only comprises 25% of the municipality, and the rest is rural, as you can see in the picture. So when we combine these two things, the need for climate action, which is actually one of our main priorities in our development plan, the 4-year development plan that we're enacting right now, and this strength that we have around civic culture, I believe we have been able to create a really interesting case study for other cities to get to know, and for that I'm really grateful to be able to speak about. So how did we decide that we were going to integrate these two relevant agendas for our city? For once, we decided that reconciling the nature and culture was necessary, and that to do so, we needed a systemic perspective. And this meant thinking about climate action and thinking about culture in a cross-cutting way that permeates every single sector and policy of the city. And I'm going to speak a little bit about how we have created working groups that treat cross-cutting issues, and how culture has played a key area in doing so. The second thing is, as I said, recognizes and value all the forms of life with which we share our habitat. And this is something Mayor Claudia Lopez, the current mayor of Bogota, she came up with this idea of prioritizing care. And I think this matches perfectly with what Mayor Sawyer was speaking about, of thinking about how humans relate to nature and the environment, because what we see as care is putting care of people, of the environment, and of our sustainability in front. And this, at the end, is a policy tool. And it's the way with which we take decisions, and the way with which we have even planned our city, and how we have integrate that into our master plan and our main planning tools for the city. And so the third, and I would say most important thing in terms of this presentation, is that we believe citizens to be agents of change. And what we have been doing is weaving networks for learning and citizens taking action in order to realize all of these goals that would lead us towards sustainability. So what I was speaking about, and the way that all of this that I was telling you becomes a reality, the first thing that we have done is redesign all of our planning tools for the city in order for them to have sustainability, environmental sustainability as a priority, and culture as a way in which this becomes a reality. So we are in the process of approving a new master plan that changes completely the way that we have structured the city, and that prioritizes our environmental assets as the first planning tool to organize the city around. The second thing is that we have launched our climate action plan that has an adaptation and mitigation roadmap up to 2050. And I would like to say here that one of the main strategies that this climate action plan uses in order to achieve that goal is civic culture. And then, and this is only just an idea and an example on how this all interact with culture. We believe there's a huge responsibility and a huge opportunity, I might say, with our historic preservation and the preservation of our heritage. So that this master plan that articulates and all the city with our environmental assets as its first tool, it does the same with our historic district preservation and management plan. And I don't know if you get to see it, but I would like just for you to understand a little bit of what I'm saying. So this is actually our historic center, and these are our main buildings. And the historic district preservation management plan manages this area of the city. And as you can see, we are on the top of the Andes, and we have this amazing mountain range that is that what this historic preservation plan does is to unite these both assets so that they don't go into different paths, but that they grow united and with a similar view of preservation for both. So what I would like right now to do is speak a little bit more about how we have been using civic culture, which is, as I was saying, one of Bogota's main strengths, in order to create new narratives and storytelling around sustainable development and use citizens as those agents of change that we need to make sustainability a reality and to make our climate action plan goals achievable thanks to our citizens. And this is also what was described by the report done by UCLG on studying the Bogota case. So this is a little bit what I'm gonna speak to you about right now. So what is it that we wanted to do? And this is something that we started doing at the beginning of 2020. So it had a lot of changes and it became a really strong web strategy given COVID. But what we first seek to do was by creating public value by applying a civic culture approach to inspire cultural change regarding environmental issues. So first, what we wanted to do and what we are still doing was explore the conditions that drive the transformation of citizens' behavior. And not just any citizens, but Bogota citizens, right? So we conducted surveys, we did a lot of research, understanding what were the narratives that Bogotanos had with regards to climate change and what were the narratives they had with regards to their role in climate change. But then we also started having lots of strategies in order to strengthen the capabilities of the technical teams and organizations who work every day, first in the government. So this is a cross-sector departments strategy, but also with NGOs and other organizations outside of the city hall that also work towards these goals. And then as a third thing, what we seek to do was to take advantage of that network of organizations working on civic culture that I was telling you about that have existed for almost 10 years now, in order to include within them also the narrative of environmental action. So as I was telling you, one of the main things we did was create an environmental Culture working group at the city level that what does is to articulate the efforts of different government organizations in order for them to create programs that address the intersection of these two topics. So in our working group, we have it is led by the Secretariat of Culture, which by the way has an Undersecretariat of Civic Culture, which has a working group on environmental culture. So this is a specific government group that's working every day towards this issue. But we also work day to day with the Environmental Secretariat, the Habitat Secretariat, the Aqueduct, the Company for Waste Management, the Economic Development Secretariat, because this has a lot to do with circular economy, the Education Secretariat, the Protection of Animals Institute, and the Botanical Garden. And so what we aim to do our last goal is to inspire a movement within the city towards a genuine circular economy. That's like the main goal of this whole strategy. And for that, we have a specific campaign that's called Trash is Not Trash. I'll talk a little bit more forward. So the strategies and line of work of this working group, cross agencies working group. First, it has an idea of caring for the environment under this umbrella that is the caring city, which is one of our main strategies. And what does that mean? It means this movement towards the circular economy, which is trash is not trash, and then a strong environmental education program that recognizes and aims to protect biodiversity. But it also has an idea of sharing with citizens the importance of caring for public space. So, for example, we have campaigns for the use and care of public bathrooms, but also I would say it is quite tight with our whole idea of redefining public spaces. And as Mayor Sawyer was also saying, green corridors are a strategic bet of this government. We are changing one of our main avenues in the city, which is the 7th Avenue, into a green corridor that would shift the use of space in order to prioritize bicycles and pedestrians. And this, of course, is quite tied to the narrative of this doing with the narrative of civic culture around circular economies. And at the end, what's important is how we portray this towards citizens for them to understand the relevance of their place within this whole system and this whole idea of a change in the city. So what we do in this
thank you so
much.
We're going to have to move to the next speaker, but we really appreciate these examples.
Okay. So if I will just say this very quickly. For once, we have an environmental culture survey where we understand the needs of the people. We develop different projects in order for citizen organizations to get scholarships if they have programs that join cultural, artistical, and educational alternatives. And we have different communication strategies that teach people how to recycle, how to reuse, and that invite them to be a part of the transformation. I think that summarizes what I wanted to say in this presentation.
Brava, thank you so much. And ending with the phrase culture as a pillar of sustainable development is getting a round of applause here in Glasgow. So we know from Izmir and from Bogota that there are frameworks, there are examples, but how do we scale up and out the idea of culture-driven, climate-resilient development to a degree commensurate with the climate emergency? It's now my pleasure to introduce Jordi Pasquale from United Cities and Local Governments, who's going to make a very exciting announcement about a new initiative that's designed to help us do just that. Jordi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, dear Andrew. Before, let me express my congratulations to the British Council, to Rosanna Lewis, especially for convening this important event, to you, Andrew, for your impressive work as coordinator of the Climate Heritage Network, and to Karima Ben-Noun, who, Karima, you have empowered cultural activists during your mandate. Thank you very much for your work. Thank you. It is a pleasure for us to introduce the report we have just written, published today, The Role of Culture in Climate Resilient Development, Strategies for Strengthening Sustainable Development while Promoting Transformative Climate Action. Two goals in one: strengthening sustainable development and climate action. Those agendas need to go together. The report has been launched by UCLG in cooperation with Working Group 5 of the Climate Heritage Network. It provides a better understanding of the cultural policies, programs, activities, and practices as enabling factors for climate resilient development pathways. Our report uses key elements of the previous work of the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, concretely in the 2018 publication, which identifies culture and values as key enabling conditions, but it omits how it can become a reality. Our report has been written to provide those evidences, to provide a deep and full treatment of the topic of culture in climate resilient development pathways. Our report operates in the context of the global frame promoted by UCLG, United Cities and Local Governments, which reaffirms our solid commitment to increase awareness and to implement a sustainable green transition agenda, inviting all cities around the world to take commitments in those areas. The Izmir Manifesto, approved on the 10th September 2021 as the main outcome of our summit held in Izmir, also goes in that direction. Thank you, dear Mayor Sawyer, for your leadership and for your concept of circular culture. Very dear, very important. Our commitment also to promote this idea in 2022 and beyond. The report is also coherent with the pioneering toolkit that we launched in 2015, Culture 21 Actions, with 9 commitments, 100 actions, still the most complete human rights-based toolkit on culture in local development, and with a very simple, very strong narrative. Culture is a pillar, a component, a dimension of sustainable development. Today, this is evident to all. The methodology of our report, I'll be brief here. Between April and June this year, 2021, the UCLG Culture Committee and the Climate Heritage Network invited contributions of cities and local and regional governments, as well as partners, sending case studies that we analyzed. Case studies are in a variety, wide variety. I will share the screen with you, and you will be able to see how the report looks like. This is the first page. These are the case studies. You will see the title, the initiator, the location, the SDG, which is the most important one addressed by the case study, the other SDGs, and the description of the practice. We have classified all case studies, the 33 that we selected, according to the SDGs and according to the 5 main topics of climate action. These are the tables. Examples from Izmir, from Quito, from Benin, from Hyderabad, also including the example we are going to see in the next minutes, the Melting Snow and Rivers in Flood project in Uganda and the UK. Huge gratitude to all CHN members, to all UCLG members, to all partners that have been involved in the report. The content, let me devote 3 minutes to the conclusions of the report. These are the 6 main areas, the entry points we invite everybody to consider. First, imagine new futures. Sadly, we still live in petrocultures and carbonscapes. We know our dear indigenous peoples and local communities hold worldviews and other interpretations of development that better suit our reality, that make the, say, industrial make-take West approaches today unsustainable. Heritage, culture, creative voices must train us all, citizens of the world, sons and daughters of Mother Earth, on helping imagine and realize new climate resilient futures. Second, understand climate vulnerability. All communities need capabilities to engage with climate change profiles and vulnerability scenarios. We need to identify the possible climate scenarios and indicate vulnerabilities, variability, and risk. These scenarios cannot be shaped unless cultural actors are involved. 3, engage with carbon. In order to aid communities in achieving a net zero future in line with the Paris Agreement, those designing cultural resilient development pathways, including cultural actors, need to be able to measure the emissions associated or avoided by relevant activities and identify the most effective ways to mitigate those emissions. 4, engage with diverse partners. Interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary are a must, involving climate scientists, activists, and policymakers, as well as cultural actors, is indispensable. Institutional structures able to support coordination among different sectors, including cultural bodies, are essential. 5, seek out synergies and prepare for trade-offs. Real and perceived tensions exist. We must be aware of this. Tensions exist between climate mitigation and adaptation on the one hand, and the promotion of culture and the conservation of heritage values on the other. Trade-offs among economic, environmental, social, and cultural objectives are to be expected. Advocates on all sides must seek to maximize win-win outcomes for people and the planet. 6, attention to equity and climate justice. We cannot ignore at this point of history, in the emergency we are living, we cannot avoid ethical considerations. They must guide climate action alongside environmental and natural science drivers. Cultural strategies can help supporting inclusive governance structures and broad participation. Equity and climate justice must be aware of the power of culture, and we cultural actors need to link our activities, our programs, with climate justice, with gender justice, with racial justice. They all support models that enable climate resilient development pathways. I finish here. Huge gratitude to all UCLG teams, especially to Agnès Ruiz and Sarah Vieux, also to Marta Llobet, the 4 members with me of the UCLG Culture Committee Secretariat, to all CHN members, especially Working Group 5, and again to Andrew Potts. Let me insist, your work has been impressive. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordi, and what a report. That title just says it all, doesn't it? Culture and climate resilient development. So we are here today to talk about that connection between culture, climate resilience, and sustainable development. And the British Council, through our arts and culture work, has been exploring how culture can respond to key challenges at a local and a global level. And we're particularly interested in 3 key themes of gender equality, social inclusion, and climate action. Last year, we published the Missing Pillar report, Culture's Contribution to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And that really explored the connection between policy and practice, but also the disconnect and the cross-cutting role that culture can play as part of the solution. Now, one of those recommendations in the report was to explore the connection between culture and climate action and resilience as a core part of sustainable development. So we're delighted to be here today to discuss this topic specifically. And we have been addressing this through our creative commissions, including 9 Earths that you saw just before. We've since been holding a series of talks called the Missing Pillar Talks, and we're pleased to announce that the next Global Missing Pillar Talk will be happening in February 2022, and that's in partnership with the UK National Commission to UNESCO and the United Cities and Local Governments Culture Committee with Jordi and his colleagues. Alison earlier mentioned that we also manage the Cultural Protection Fund in partnership with the UK Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport. Now, this launched back in 2016, and it's funded over 70 cultural protection programmes in 17 countries, with around £35 million of funding, resulting in over 280,000 actions to safeguard cultural heritage at risk, and reaching more than 15,000 people trained in cultural heritage protection. The fund initially was looking at the risk due to conflict to cultural heritage. Now, however, the threat of climate change on cultural heritage is an urgent global issue, and one that the CPF is now tackling by making the most of international partnerships and creating local solutions. We recently launched a pilot in East Africa, which supports the preparedness for the effects of natural disasters and climate change on cultural heritage and communities. And we've recently announced further funding for these projects as part of the Cultural Protection Fund. So we are delighted to have with us today Catherine Leonard, who's the Secretary General of the International National Trust Organization and one of our partners and grantees for the CPF project, Melting Snow and Rivers in Flood, in partnership with Cross Cultural Foundation of Uganda. And this project aims to protect the tangible and intangible heritage of the Bakonzo and Alur communities at risk due to rapidly melting snow in the Rwenzori Mountains in western Uganda. So, Catherine, thank you so much for joining us today. Please do have a seat.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here. Is that working?
Is it? Yes, that should be working for you. So could you tell us a little bit more about your work at INTU on climate, and particularly this project?
Yes, so the INTU is an umbrella body for the global family of national trusts that come together to share experiences and ideas, and not to not reinvent the wheel, to work together and to build capacity in organisations around the world. And we've been working in the climate space for many years. I was reflecting that it's about almost exactly 10 years ago that delegates at an INTU conference in Victoria, Canada, called for climate and for culture to be taken more into account in the high-level climate change debates. And that was a message that we then took off to the COP in Durban, COP17, I think, and we've been taking it to COPs ever since. But it's really taken this event in Glasgow to be a moment where the world leaders sort of, where not world leaders, but where that has made it onto the agenda. And we're really grateful to all of you online watching, and everybody's efforts, and particularly to Andrew Potts for making that a reality, because we know that the loss to cultural heritage, the impacts of climate change on cultural heritage are huge, but also that cultural heritage has a role to play in combating them as well.
Yeah, it definitely, and to have arts, culture and heritage as part of this COP Resilience Hub today is a real achievement. We've also seen some people tweeting about this in the highest of ranks, which is a real first, even for COPs. And so for this project, tell us a little bit more about Melting Snow and Rivers in Flood, your project in Uganda.
Sure. So we're delighted to be working with the Cross Cultural Foundation of Uganda, bringing them together with the National Trust of England, Wales and Northern Ireland to really to highlight the impacts of climate change on cultural heritage in two areas of Uganda. So the Rwenzori Mountains, the World Heritage Site of Rwenzori in western Uganda, and also on the Nile region, where on the banks of the Nile, working with the Allur and Acholi peoples there, and our project is all about shielding irreplaceable cultural heritage from the impacts of climate change. But I guess more importantly than that, it's about activating and empowering those local communities, so so that they feel that they have agency and that they can use their really important local cultural knowledge to fight the impacts, what climate change is doing to their very precious cultural beliefs, practices, and places.
Yes, and I believe there's also a partner in the UK, and there's that real exchange of practice and knowledge that's happening across this project.
Yes, which is fabulous. So that's what we're all about in our network is exchanging ideas and experiences and building capacity and building resilience in other parts of the world.
Great. And in your experience, how do you feel culture and heritage can contribute to climate resilience and sustainable development? I mean, that's a huge question and not something that we can necessarily summarize here today, but just some reflections from your knowledge and your experience in this field.
So, I mean, this project, particularly, which we're going to see the film about in a minute, is it really shows how that people-centered approach can really work. And we see in the film the site at Wanglei, where we're using nature-based solutions, so natural flood management as a solution to protecting the significant cultural heritage site there, and then in the Rwenzori, where melting glaciers are causing the loss of cultural beliefs and practices that, by engaging, we have a Ugandan team who've been documenting those and building capacity so that the local communities can continue preserving and celebrating these practices into the future. And so it's nature-based solutions and culture-based solutions. And the National Trusts of the world have been looking after nature and culture together holistically for over 130 years, and we're really thrilled that there's now a heritage trust in Uganda that's going to carry on this vital project work. And across our network of organisations, we see day in, day out that culture, heritage, the arts, place, those are means to bring people together, to have these really important conversations, to provide the space for those conversations, and to inspire people to take action, to change their own behaviours. So it's a really, really good opportunity, I think, to get people to understand that climate change is not just something that happens over there; it's happening in their neighbourhoods as well. And by kind of inspiring and activating people, showing that we can make things happen, working together as a global community and network.
Yes, and definitely, I couldn't agree more. It's also connecting that tangible heritage of sites and buildings and places with the more intangible practices that happen, and the traditions and the skills and the knowledge that comes from different communities engaging with their environments and expressing themselves creatively. And preserving the heritage and valuing it for their own communities. We'll be hearing from Emily Drani from the Cross-Cultural Foundation of Uganda in the short film that we'll be showing briefly, but is there anything you'd like to add before we do that?
I add my thanks to the British Council and the Cultural Protection Fund for funding the project in the first place. And there are three things that really stand out for me from the project. That one is that really that need for that three things that actually can be replicated in other projects that stand out from our project, but that work all around the world. And that's one, the need for very authentic community engagement. So working with the people who live near our heritage sites, whether that's in here in Scotland or in the UK or in Uganda, we need to make sure that we're engaging and working in partnership with local people. We also, I think, need to break down I don't know if we'll see this in the film, not sure which bit of the film we've got. It's a clip from a longer film. That I think sometimes the idea of climate change can be alienating, and I think if there's a way that we can help people kind of think about what they value and how and sort of how that resonates with them, rather than, climate change can just sort of sometimes scare us all, I think, the idea of climate change. So we can use heritage and culture to bring that home to people. And then lastly, and we hear this a lot from our INTO member organisations around the world, is that people only really care about things that they're actively, when they're actively involved, or they're proactive, or they really understand what's at stake, or they're part of or they've engaged with the stories that are being told, or they're somehow sort of part of the solution, but also part of a wider group of people, a wider community partnership or a network. And I think that's great. That's sort of what we're managing to kind of build on as a global national trust movement. We're all doing really important work. Our partners in Uganda, but across the world, that work that's vital for heritage protection, for sustainable development, and for building resilience.
Thank you. I mean, I can't really add to that. I think it's definitely all things, values that are behind the way that we work through culture, that we share in our Culture Protection Fund and in all of our work, and I'm sure Andrew from the Climate Heritage Network would agree. So we will now move then to showing you a short film of melting snow and rivers in flood before we end this session. Thank you.
Ndio bangabyabula munga hanu mama saba kukoba kitashamba tuliokonya kushikuweni abo mushya makola kuti utuhe tukakusaba utuhya maezi wangatokeri kulia bana abakuluba malamu wabwangane na kitashamba twanga homurekani kuba bya hakera abatata bakina balere.
Because of the melting glaciers, but also because of unpredictable rainfall, we found there's a lot of flooding in 2018 and 2019. Their belief system is greatly at risk, and we felt it's important not only to try and retrieve what is left, but also raise awareness about the intangible cultural heritage attached to some of these sites.
Ebentu mu byasenda binene nerolusi bwamabitwala kabuli
hanu habi shandekere neryo ekyenyi kimusikuza jamale kamabu jamale tushangwangwa neryo shamasa shama bilya shandekere shepese bya hanu neryo shamahwaho.
We have so many cultural sites around us, and people really respect them. We ask the people to work with us to see, first of all, how we can map, document, and make these sites known. Places of sacrifice, places of prayer. We were able to identify about 50 cultural sites, but most of them have been affected by the floods.
Our business is to care for heritage and make sure that it's safe, it's preserved, it's well known. So on the one hand, you have conservationists who are interested in biodiversity and climate change, global warming, concepts which are very foreign. And on the other hand, for different reasons, a community is contributing to those objectives by caring about their forests and making sure the water bodies are clean and they're not contaminated, because water is also considered sacred.
The Cultural Foundation of Uganda is trying to work with the cultural leaders and the elders within the community to make sure that we use cultural knowledge to see how we mitigate the effects of climate. They told us that there are special types of vegetation that you can plant near the river. They can be planted by the spiritual leaders, and when the river floods again, it doesn't go beyond that kind of vegetation.
Abandu abakuru bakuru na balere balere okwa muwasu owemenye iringeyi.
Thank you for that film, and thank you for sharing with us, Catherine. So we have a couple of minutes left before the end of our session here. And we were wondering if our speakers online would like to join us in the room briefly, if we can get them back on screen. Brilliant to see you all. Thank you for staying with us for this session. And we just wanted to hear from each of you a short reflection on what you've heard today and all the contributors of this session. So we'll start with you, Karima, if you could just share with us some final reflections.
I was very struck by the statement in the Nine Earths movie, use it. And they said, use it as a consumer. I think that's a very important message. I would also say, use it as a citizen, use it as a cultural practitioner, use it as a human being. And I think what we've learned from the wonderful presentations at this event today is that we need to use culture to unleash that power, to ensure effective climate action is taken now, and frankly, to insist that around the world we have political leadership that is fully committed to our human and cultural survival.
Thank you, Karima, and it's great to see that some of the films are able to translate and get across some really powerful messages. So thank you for sharing that with us. I think we have Jordi as well still online with us. So we're just getting you up on the screen. Hello. Nice to see you.
Hello.
Yeah, if you'd like to just share some reflections from your side.
What can I say? I've been delighted to follow all the event. I learned a lot from you. And what I can say is that we need urgent, super urgent action, and that all cultural actors need to be mobilized, committed as soon as possible. January 2022 is too late. Next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordi. And yeah, cultural actors that we've heard from today, but also city leaders and some scientists that have been involved in most of our projects to back up the strong messages that we can get across through arts and culture. So thank you. And Catherine, just coming to you as well.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure being part of this discussion, and I think for me it underlines that climate change remains the single greatest threat to the landscapes and historic buildings looked after by national trust organisations around the world, but as you say, other actors as well. And I think, we need to carry on working in partnership. We need a coordinated global response to this climate crisis.
Definitely, and that's what we're all here to do today at this COP26 Resilience Hub, where there are many sessions on a variety of topics. Also, naming today the Youth and Public Empowerment Day for COP26 is another way to bring us all together as people, all fighting towards less climate change in the world. And I'd just like to finish by reminding everyone about some sessions tonight at the Glasgow Caledonian University at 6:30 p.m. Please, if you are in Glasgow, join us in person, but those who are online, you can also watch the live stream on the Resilience Hub. I'd like to also thank all the partners involved in this session and in all of the arts and culture heritage sessions throughout the 2 weeks of COP. So that's the Climate Heritage Network, the United Cities and Local Governments, Praxis at Leeds University, and the COP Resilience Hub itself. And thank you to our speakers, so Catherine, Karima, Jordi, Andrea, Tungsoy, Mea Soya, for your contributions today, and Alison, Barrett as well. So thanks everyone for being with us today, and we wish you a happy COP for the rest of the time that you're here. And thanks to those who've joined us online. Really appreciate it. Thank you.